What's the worst of the two clips that we have of Tucker Carlson today?
That's a good question. The longer one.
Yeah, I would say that. Here is Tucker Carlson on his program last night. It was his monologue. What should be the biggest concern of Americans today? Well, of course, people who think that Black lives should be valued in the same way that white lives are in our society.
But Democrats know better than that. They don't lie to themselves. They understand there is a revolution in progress. The death of George Floyd may have sparked widespread outrage, sincere outrage, and they may share that outrage. But they also know that what is happening now has very little to do with George Floyd or people like him. Like all revolutions, the point is to destroy the current system and replace it with something new. But replace it with what? That's the question the rest of us should be asking right now. We should know what's coming. We know what we have now. Our current system has been in place for hundreds of years. It's based on a very simple idea. All people are created by God with equal moral value, period. Every one of them. For that reason, and that reason alone, all Americans are treated equally under the laws of the United States. In this country, we judge you for what you do, not how you were born. That idea has been the defining principle of America since the 18th century. It's the main reason we are the fairest society in the world. It's the reason people move here. To the extent America has failed to live up to that principle of equality, we are ashamed of it. We should be. Equality is the most important thing we have. We should defend it. We should practice it. Now, for the first time in our history, we're witnessing a broad and powerful attack on the principle of equality. Daily, we are told that all people are not, in fact, created equal. Some were born with moral stain, others were not. Some Americans are guilty, some are innocent. Nothing can change this because it was all determined at birth. All we can do is respond accordingly. People in favored groups must be held to one standard. Those in disfavored groups, the morally tainted ones, must be held to another standard. The country retains one set of laws, mostly for the sake of formality, but we must apply those laws in very different ways, according to the DNA and the background of the accused.
All right, let me translate what he's saying here, is that he is afraid that he is basically arguing that white people are now oppressed in our society, that these people want to create, and these people, I don't know who these people are. I don't know if we're included in his definition of these people. Maybe we are collaborators with the Black folk who want to do this.
Oh, we are. Jews are an important part of this conspiracy theory, actually.
Well, of course, yes. I mean, we're pulling the strings. I was talking just broadly speaking as a white person, but as a Jew, yes, I have a special place in this because wow. I've got my whole control center right behind. All I got to do actually is I press this panel in right there, just push it in. The whole thing spins around, and I'm in a control center.
InfoSec, Sam.
I'm not worried about it. People don't know where I am. People don't know where I am. He says, in this country, we judge you. Who do you think, like, and Matt, Brendan, join in here. Like, who's the we and what is the judge? Like, what do they talk? What is he talk? I mean, like
he wants to make it
really slow this down and digest what he is saying, because it's really deeply disturbing where he's going with this whole thing. We, like, in this country, we judge you. Like, who's the we and what is the judgment? Because the fact is that where you are born, what zip code determines. There's so much. If you give me 100 people born in a specific zip code, and I find out the median income in that zip code, there is so much that I will be able to tell about what you're going to be doing 20 or 30 years from now, or 40 years from now, that either I'm a mind reader, or there are certain things that are literally cast in stone. And even in, even like a river of stone, the water runs down. The vast majority of it goes in one direction. There's always going to be exceptions. A little water trickles off that way. A little water trickles off that way. But our society, the fact is that it's not a question of moral taint for the vast majority of people. It's simply a question of like, how much has the history of this country led to you being born, luckily, in this area by these parents? The systems have been built that your future is already in some ways predetermined.
If there's a stain, like he wants to make it a moral stain when really if there's a stain, it's a material stain.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminds me of Howard Schultz when he's like, we should start using things like people of means or people of wealth, because he's actually getting to the point where it's offensive. It's as offensive being anti-black to be anti-rich person. I think honestly, Tucker kind of feels and wants to plant.
Oh yeah. He's saying that just by talking about white privilege and, probably class privilege as well, although he paints himself as a populist, you are impugning the morality of all white people and prejudging them for that, when that is in fact not what's going on. It's just a material fact.
His argument is that black people and their accomplices are saying that white people are morally repugnant because they are white. And he is basically just setting up. I mean, he's just basically saying there's a race war that's brewing. You need to be aware of it. You are considered to be hopelessly irredeemable. Our society is considered to be hopelessly irredeemable. So what they're going to do is attempt to eliminate you. That's the message. I want to say subtext, but it's almost the text, frankly, of what he is saying to his millions of viewers, the vast majority of whom are white. And they're not morally tainted by their virtue of being white. But certainly what they're being fed is tainting them in some way. And it probably is going to taint their behavior in some fashion.
It's crazy because that's really the exact opposite of what's going on in this movement. Like, nobody has told me not to participate because I'm white, and Jews, slightly different, I guess, under this rubric. But it's about believing that the world can be better, and that white people should participate in making the world better, along with people of all races, because it's a movement for racial justice, and it's a working class movement. And when black people live well, everyone will live well.
This is very much, I think, consistent with the idea that he's arguing that it is in part one side of an argument that it is a zero-sum game. And if I hate to bring this back, but if black people get rights and to have value in our society, then it's necessarily going to come out of the social capital of white people. And I think on some level, there's some measure of truth to that.
And that's why this is so insidious, I feel like.
Yes.
On like a cultural level.
Well, I mean, a lot of people in this movement are also socialists, and we want to change it from a zero-sum game to something that is more liberatory for everyone. Like, I was talking about this on the Antifada the other day with Sean. Like, it used to be that it was a pretty good deal offered to white workers in the post-war era, saying you don't get to control your own life, really. You don't get to own the means of production, but you have a decent standard of living, you have a job, and you're definitely above a lot of people who are lower than you on the totem pole if you're a white man, right? And now relative privilege still exists, but the absolute goodies that gets you when you cash it in at the racism factory or whatever is not so great anymore, right? Like, if it's a choice between being like living a decent life as a white worker and everyone below you is immiserated, that's one thing. Now it's more like a choice between being like white people are kind of immiserated and black people are like very immiserated. Like, I can see why fewer and fewer people would think that that's a good deal.
Yeah, but I think that's not. I mean, I think Tucker is sort of studiously avoiding that, insofar as that, like, to the extent that there is any type of material analysis that goes in it, it's just that black people are getting all the money through the the Obama cell phone slush fund or whatever it is. And I think what he's basically saying, when he's talking about moral tainting, he's not talking about material benefit, because he can't, because he knows that the people he's talking to, and that he himself, they're when they look at this, what's going on, it's not, their concern is not necessarily material. They resent the fact that they perceive it as, that these people are getting something for nothing. But what they're talking about is social cachet. I can't say certain things. I am considered a racist because I have certain opinions, that people can call me a racist, that I can feel like I am somehow on the outside. It used to be I was centered. I was centered in everything. I was the one who would get the yes, sir, yes, ma'am. And now I'm not. And I mean, look at, like, how do you describe the effectiveness of, you can't wear masks? I mean, we have a situation now in Arizona and in Texas where mayors of blue cities, for the lack of a better term, have literally had to beg for the opportunity to have mandatory mask wearing in the middle of a pandemic when it's spiking in their environments. Same thing in Oklahoma. In Oklahoma, the governor of Oklahoma has said that if your city calls for mandatory mask wearing in public, we will deny you federal funds. We will deny you federal funds. Now, like, in what possible, like, calculation is mask wearing the ability to make this cultural on their behalf? Like, how does this is the thing, I think, like, where, this gets back to our old timey zero-sum game argument. Like, to me, that is a cultural signifier that just becomes a way of basically saying, like, I am against the everything that is in any way communitarian, everything that is, that to me is an example of people who say, like, I am losing my privilege. I am being told what to do in a society for the sake of other people. And that concept in their heads is, I think it is consistent with a mode of thinking that has been transferred from, like, we got the federal government coming into our states and telling us what to do. And we know what the underlying basis of that is. I mean, in part economic, and it was developed certainly, to protect the economic, fortunes of slave owners. But I don't know that. I mean, even if I can see that, I don't know that that hasn't taken a life of its own now, where you see it's so easily transferable to just wearing masks during a pandemic.
Yeah, well, this is what the right does. They make everything into a culture war, and they mystify the material facts that I was just laying down, so that, maybe white people will decide that they would rather, they think it's in their best interest to side with rich white people like Tucker Carlson. Like, it's layers and layers of mystification over, like, the actual material facts of what's going on in society and how people can best advance their interests.
Yeah, anytime they can highlight and emphasize the government controlling your life as opposed to your boss, they'll do that.
Mm-hmm. And that's why we should not try to find common cause with wing populists. Like, sorry, it's basically just fascism. It's never going to.
Oh, Jamie's freezing up a little bit. Is that me or is that her?
Yeah, I think the right-wing populists got to Jamie.
Right-wing populists shut down her internet.